title. I love the episode title for this one, The Real Good Guys, because I think there's a play there where it's New Republic, but it's also the kids, right? Like they are also kind of the real good guys here. So I like that. I feel like it's a little play on both sides of that.
Crazy to think, but Skeleton Crew has already come and gone, and it was a great Star Wars show. So today's podcast, as usual, we'll go through our grades. We'll talk about episode 8, but also I'm going to talk a little bit about where maybe we could see this story going. Maybe not as Skeleton Crew season 2, but more so just some themes from this story, maybe some characters, things like that. And then where the podcast is going to take a shift next. So apologies for a slightly different format on the recording, as my speaker just wasn't going, or something happened with the entire conversion process with my video editing. Either way, I'm going to clip some of Kevin's responses in because I'm recording my portion on a completely different day. So you'll get to see what Kevin thinks as well. So yeah, it'll be a little bit weird, maybe clunky, but that's where we're going to go today. So first of all, my grades for this series, or for this episode, not for this series, but for this episode, I would give this an 8. I think an 8 is a very fair number. It checked a lot of boxes. It really did everything that it needed to do to wrap up this very contained story that they decided to tell. So you get payoffs for all the characters. You've got some action. You've got the X-Wings. You've got a lot to watch there in about 36 minutes. So I thought it was a lot of fun. I think an 8 is a very fair number. Not my favorite of all of the Skeleton Crew episodes. I would say that one definitely would still be episode 5. Then probably maybe episode 6 after that. The first episode was great too. So this one I would have maybe below a few episodes, but still 8 out of 10. Very fair number for this episode. And man, I think it ended the show perfectly, staying contained, didn't, fall prey to all the cameos that we were maybe thinking would happen. I know I said, Thrawn's going to show up, because I didn't trust that Disney, Lucasfilm, Star Wars wouldn't throw the big cameo in there. Just everything that they've given us to this point makes us think they're going to do a cameo, but they didn't. Kudos to them. They just kept it within the story, told the story of these kids and Jod as they needed to tell it, and moved on. So here's a little bit of Kevin scoring on this episode.
I think I landed at 8.5. Kind of like what you just said. I feel like it really pays off all the characters really well. You get a lot of really good moments to kind of close out their arcs. We get really good stuff with Jod. There's some moments in here that I didn't like as much, which is why it's a little bit lower. But looking back on the season as a whole, I think it end caps it really, really well. And it closes off a lot of kind of some of the themes and stuff we've seen throughout the show. So can't complain too much. It was a lot of fun. I can easily put those little things aside.
So now hopping in to episode 8. So episode 8, The Real Heroes. As soon as you see that this episode is called The Real Heroes, it's very obvious we're going to see some X-Wings. These kids have been learning all throughout the season that the X-Wings are actually the good guys. So I actually really liked that we knew X-Wings were going to show up at some point. And so I was just kind of waiting on the edge of my seat the whole time for the X-Wings to get there. We knew that the little callback to Kim, that KB would end up calling her at some point, because in episode 3, Kim said, hey, give me a call if you ever need me. So they threw that out there for us. She called Kim. Kim sends the X-Wings. I loved that aspect of the story. I loved that we got to see who the supervisor was pretty early. I would say it was 6 or 7 minutes into the show. We actually get that reveal on who the supervisor is, and the most logical choice of it being a robot actually turned out to be true. So that's what happened. Jod goes up to that tower with Fern and her mom, and he sees the big robot there, and the robot talks to him. The robot listens to him, has that big eye, kind of paying attention to everything, and then all of a sudden the robot calls Jot out. He says, "You say you're an emissary and a Jedi, but the last message we got from the Republic is that the Jedi were traitors. So which one are you lying about?" The funny thing about that is Jot was actually lying about both. Not an emissary and currently not a Jedi either. So that was a great scene, and it really just right off the bat got us there. So we knew it was a robot. A lot of speculation about the supervisor. It was a lot of fun. Like in the few weeks of this show leading up to it, like, oh, who is it? Is it Tack Rennet? Is it going to be like Palpatine or Thrawn or whatever? That was a lot of fun speculation. But for the purpose of this story, it made sense that it was a robot. This whole, planet is run by droids. So why would this also not be a droid? It was really cool that Fern's mom also was like not even thinking twice about the fact that it was a droid. Like, yeah, it's part of what we do. So it was a droid. It was no surprise to any of the adults in the show that it was a droid. So I thought that was just a nice thing that they did there, not giving in probably to the pressures of including something like a big cameo or something tying it back to the Skywalker saga. I think they did really good by keeping it just within AT-AT. Great choice on their part. Another great thing with episode 8 is that they paid off every single character. So let's see. Start with Wim, obviously. His was a big deal, right? So he has got this infatuation with the Jedi, right? He idolizes them. When he had the chance to use the lightsaber in episode 5, he had it turned the wrong way. Like, it was just a silly thing. So and then this episode, he gets to be the hero. He talks his dad into going on this mission, and he actually like gets his chance with the saber again, and he holds it the right way, and he actually does get to meet someone who kind of sort of was a Jedi, or at least was trained by one, in Jod. He learns the truth about the Jedi, which sure was kind of hard for that character in world there, but he gets a really good full circle moment of having his big Jedi hero moment, him holding that saber right way up. Perfect picture for him. You see Neil. He gets to be brave. He goes on the motorbike ride with them, and when he gets hit, he's like, "No, you guys keep going." Then he goes to that big cannon, which we knew kind of had a good idea that AT-AT was going to have one of those cannons as well, because we saw it on Ad-Akron. So Neil actually gets in there, provides cover for KB. KB goes from riding shotgun next to Fern, passenger in the first episode, right? She's in the little side seat, to actually taking her bike, getting on the Onyx Cinder, and she's the one flying and taking the shots and leading and overcoming whatever disability hurdle she has to get over. We see her doing that. She fixes KB. So that was really good. And we see her parents like kind of rooting her on the whole time, like they know she's going to do it. Like, they're so confident in her. And I think we as an audience just watching this character, I don't think we ever doubted that she was going to get it done either at this point. So we see her character kind of come full circle there. And then Fern, obviously, we see her taking charge, leading in the right way. She actually has to get her mom to come around to the whole you need to pull the plug and turn the barrier off, because her mom, it was almost frustrating that she would not just get with the picture. She kept trying to protect AT-AT the whole time, almost like kind of clunkily not realizing that there's not really going to work that way now, right? There's nothing to protect them because the pirates are there. That was like maybe one complaint I had about the episode, is just how long it took her to come around. But we do see Fern finally talking her into that. Fern kind of gets her hero moment. She's leading. So we just see her leading maybe in a different way by the end of this. So it was really cool to see all of these characters come around again by the end of this series. I think it was very well done. In classic like 80s movies fashion, the parents who were kind of lame, right, always keeping their kids down, they get in on the adventure at the end, and they kind of realize that their kids are doing this big great thing, and they're listening to the kids, and they're doing all the same things. You see Wendell giving that hilarious, awesome line, like, "I'm a level 7 systems administrator, systems analyst," or something like that. That was so funny because it was like the lamest thing, but he said it in the coolest way. And that just kind of felt like all these nostalgic 80s movies as well. So, episode 8, lot of fun for our main characters. Also, a couple things thrown into episode 8 that I didn't necessarily like think of as much in the moment, but have thought about after. Is the New Republic knows about Ad Akron now? That's kind of a big deal. X-wings are known as the greatest pirate busters in the galaxy, so apparently maybe that's kind of what a lot of the New Republic X-wing pilots have been doing, is going around like taking out pirates. Maybe pirates are like a big deal. So that was an interesting thing to learn about. I'm really interested to see, though, kind of where this story goes from here, given that the New Republic actually knows about AT-AT. And so I'll talk about that a little bit more in kind of the what's next for this story. But I did think that was pretty interesting. So I'm going to pause, throw in some of Kevin's thoughts on the episodes here, and then we'll pick back up. Sorry for this being a little bit clunky.
And you mentioned the show title. I love the episode title for this one, The Real Good Guys, because I think there's a play there where the New Republic, but it's also the kids, right? Like they are also kind of the real good guys here. So I like that. I feel like it's a little play on both sides of that. And it's so cool when they show up, because it's always, I feel like you see it through the eyes of the kids, that it's just this big grand entrance of like the heroes soaring in from the sky. Every time they come in, I think they make a big deal of it, which is cool. The shot of the pirate ship coming in where they're standing there and it comes through the clouds, like that one, and then kind of a similar shot at the end where Wim looks up and sees that Corellian Corvette fly in. Like there are just some really great scenes throughout the show, some just great stills. So I will say the speeder chase redeemed Book of Boba Fett. I will say that. Yeah, I was super happy that nothing got wedged in there at the end, because it really would have stolen a lot from all that had taken place throughout this episode and throughout the show, just to have some major character pop up right at the end and kind of steal the show. Um, Now that doesn't mean I still felt like the show ended so jarringly. It was such an abrupt cut to credits. Um, so I wish they had done some things a little bit different there. But again, that's the only reason I've taken points off this episode. It has a lot to do with just the really jarring end to the episode. Yeah, not only did it tell a good story, but without connecting to any of those large pieces, it still felt so very Star Wars, right? From the visuals to the characters to the dialogue to the action, like all of it just fits so well. And so
So, next up, just kind of looking at this series as a whole, right? So, episodes 1 through 8, gosh, it's got to be one of my favorite viewing experiences for a Star Wars show on Disney Plus. Very little criticism, and the things that I do criticize are just kind of nitpicky. It's not like big story issues that we're having here. So that's something that I think actually turned out to be pretty good with this show. Like Ahsoka is my favorite Star Wars show. Still is. But I have plenty of complaints kind of about how all that shook out. So, week to week, not necessarily super happy with everything that happened there. But in this show, it just kept chugging along. It kept telling the story that it wanted to tell. It stuck to it. It stayed character focused, didn't get too like bogged down in lore and things like that, which is fun for a change. So yeah, I think the series as a whole, it's got to be a 9 out of a 10 for me. 9.5, just because it stuck to its guns the whole time. And I mean, you kind of look at Rotten Tomatoes, you look at what fans are saying. Everyone kind of remembers the Acolyte and the backlash and how polarizing it was. Same can be said with the sequel trilogy, specifically The Last Jedi. A lot of people really love it or really hate it. This show doesn't seem really to be like really hate it show. There's a few people, a few trolls out there who have really hated it. And some people who just genuinely haven't liked it, but not for like bad reasons or anything like that. Just wasn't their cup of tea, which is fine. But overwhelmingly, people have been pretty positive about this show, which is just a lot of fun for Star Wars, because that hasn't necessarily been the case lately. From Mando season 3, a lot of people didn't like what went down in Ahsoka, and a whole lot of people didn't like the Acolyte. But Skeleton Crew seemed to have maybe coalesced the troops a little bit. Maybe Star Wars fans kind of like this lighthearted nature of a show a little bit better. I know personally I liked getting away from all the negativity that came with it. So it's been a lot of fun talking about this. Really love seeing the character growth from start to finish. Really simple idea, right? Just grow these four characters from being lost to being back on their home world and give them some heroic adventures on the way, give them some adversity. It's super simple, but simple works. Seeing Jod from start to finish, I mean, my goodness, he's like one of the most interesting characters that we don't know much about as a whole. Like he has all these different aliases. He was on the planet with the spy. He was like Professor somebody. He was Captain Silvo. He was Crimson Jack. He was Jod. He was the emissary. There's probably like one other thing in that third episode with Kim. He had some kind of name there too, I think. So it's funny seeing him, like the fact that he's just a survivor. He just keeps flying through all of these aliases to keep going. And then at the end of the series, we still like want to know a lot about him, but we don't know that much. We learn that he is or he was taken in by a Jedi, but this was apparently after Order 66, and the Jedi that took him in, she was killed, I guess, by Inquisitors, you would think, or the Empire or something. He got away. We don't really know if he was even telling the truth and all of that. You assume he is, but you kind of see that throughout the lens of this whole show. Yes, he's bad. He's kind of the antagonist by the end, but then he still doesn't hurt the kids, right? Like he's kind of formed this bond with them from start to finish, even though he was just using them to get to the treasure. He says, like, I don't want to hurt anybody. And then you just kind of lead off with him, like he's just kind of walking away. He's watching the pirate ship go down. And that's it for Jod. So it makes us definitely want more of him. And I think that's a good thing. I think the show did great in giving us just enough of what we needed to know about him and still keep us wanting a whole lot more as we, kind of go through the whole, what's going to be next. For what's next, as far as these kids go, their story. Fortunately, we already have a little bit of information there from John Watts, I believe, is the one who said this, but he's like got it in his head if they even do a season two. Not guaranteed, not even necessary, because it would have to be a very different story. But these kids, their story, there would be some kind of a time jump, they've said, because obviously in the real world, these actors are aging. They're not going to be this young ever again. So there would be some form of a time jump. Could I see them going around, I guess, on the Onyx Cinder with the SM-33, exploring the galaxy? Sure. Not sure that story is necessary. I would certainly watch it if they did it. But yeah, that seems to be like the only possibility for them. I don't know that we see them in the Mandalorian story, the Mandoverse against Thrawn. Maybe so. I mean, I guess if you're going to have this large scale war against Thrawn, we know these kids live in the galaxy in this time. I suppose it's possible that they show up at some point, and I would definitely welcome that. But I don't know that it's necessary. Like they just told an awesome story, and maybe that's what we get out of these characters, and I would be okay with that too. I do think Atten definitely stays relevant within this story. So we know the New Republic, we see them landing at the end of the episode in that Corellian Corvette. We know that Atten has a lot of money, and we know that the New Republic's about to fight a war that's going to need a lot of money. So it only makes sense that in some shape, form, or capacity, they'll make reference to the fact that they do have a lot of funding now from Atten, because we know this New Republic's going to show up and they're going to really kind of take it for all it's worth. They're going to welcome into the New Republic, but they're also going to need those resources. So I think that's probably what's going to happen for Atten, good, bad, or indifferent. They're probably funding this big war against Thrawn. And that would almost kind of explain why we don't know a lot about all these planets in the sequel trilogy era with the First Order. So if the New Republic just kind of takes Atten for all its resources, even if Atten's okay with it, right? The citizens are like, yeah, we're winning this battle, but then they're just kind of a non-important planet 30 years from now because they did use all of their, reserve money or whatever. that's okay too, right? It kind of explains them out of the situation, because it would be weird getting to this sequel trilogy that's kind of just wedged in there anyways, with a big lack of planning, and having all these planets and stories from all this stuff that we're coming to love through Disney Plus. You just kind of have to forget, like, oh, none of that actually happened. It's not relevant now. There needs to be some explanation there. So that would kind of explain away AT-AT and 2. I think the New Republic's definitely going to be interested in all of that gold, because as we know in Ahsoka, and Mando, I guess season 3, maybe a little bit in season 2 as well, the New Republic's not just doing great, right? It's a new governing authority. So walking into a very large, like eternal sum of money would probably definitely be beneficial for them there. Jod's story, I think, would be cool to tell going forward, maybe through animation. I think Jude Law is probably pretty expensive to keep on retainer, right? Like, and have him acting in shows. So I don't know if we actually see Jude Law showing back up on screen again. It'd be cool if we did, but don't know that we will. But maybe an animation, comics, books, something like that, just exploring how he kind of got to where he is today, the Jod that we have. I think that would be a very interesting thing for sure. Mainly because there are so many aliases that Jod has, right? Like, you can follow, like, one episode, say you do like a Tales of the Jod animated series. You could follow Captain Jack. You could follow Jod as a kid getting found by a Jedi. You could follow uh Crimson Jack, and then Captain Silvo. You could follow him as that. There's like all these aliases, plus plenty more. These are the only ones we know about. So I think in an animated avenue, that would be a lot of fun to see that. I think Jod's a pretty beloved character at this point, so people would welcome seeing that. And if you look at the Tales of the Empire last year, they focused on Morgan Elsbeth. They gave her a backstory, and honestly, not the most interesting character to give us a backstory on, just my opinion. So why would we think they wouldn't give us something from a character we learned about this year? I think that would be a lot of fun. So maybe we do get a little bit of Tales of the Jod. I think they'll phrase it a lot better than that. Maybe Tales of the Pirates or something like that. But you could definitely have that story too. So yeah, there's a lot of possibilities, I'm sure, for where this could go. But I hope they are very mindful about it, not just telling a story or including these characters again just to be doing it. It needs to be a good story that kind of builds off this, and this just kind of feels like it wrapped it up very well to me. It leaves us wanting more, but it's not like this story specifically needs to be continued. We just kind of want a few answers here and there. So I think they did just a really great job on this show, with the fact that if they don't do another season, it kind of stands alone on its own outside of all the Star Wars stuff. A+ job on Skeleton Crew. Keep giving us more lighthearted, fun stories that are fairly well disconnected, like this one. I think that's a great path forward. Hopefully, the viewership kind of picks up once they actually, the show's been out, people can binge watch it. Hopefully, that gets a little bit better, because I would love for them to like take this model and do it a little bit more. So that's kind of my thoughts on that. For the podcast going forward, next week, Kevin and I are going to discuss 2025 Star Wars projects. Should be a lot of fun. So we'll be talking Andor, we'll be talking Visions. We also have the Revenge of the Sith 20th anniversary, the Force Awakens 10th anniversary, maybe some speculation about what Tales series that we're going to get this year. So we're going to talk that next week. And then the following week, we're going to do a draft for a Star Wars team. So we're going to get $15 to pick, different characters that are tiered at different prices. And then we're going to see which one of our teams win. We may plug it into Chat GPT or something and see which team wins. So that's the next couple weeks. Going to be a lot of fun. Thanks to all the new people who joined us along the way for Skeleton Crew. We hope you hang around. We appreciate that you are watching, and we'll catch you guys next time.